Carlos Prado, and today I'll be talking about my artist's final plate, which is the Riverside project.
The site is essentially located in Las Pinas, the NCR 4th District, and here, as you can see, an ollie map to give you an idea of how dense the place is. And here we have the topography map. And here we have the scope of the project, essentially spanning a kilometer long and runs up until the C5 road extension and Naga Road.
Las Piñas is plagued by a variety of problems. However, the most notable problems Las Piñas has is with its walkability, or rather the lack thereof.
Now let's take a look at the typical sidewalks of Las Piñas. Now, what one can usually observe when walking Las Piñas is that sidewalks are quite narrow. The width varies between 600 to 1200 millimeters and is usually obstructed by utility poles or trees, which means that pedestrians will still have to use the roads and consequently compete with vehicles for space. Not entirely pedestrian friendly, if you ask me. Another prominent problem is the lack of signages and directions, which makes traversing through Las Piñas quite difficult since there are really not much landmarks or visual cues that could tell you where you are in Las Piñas. And with signages, even if there are signages, it is either obstructed from view or has outdated information. Besides information in sidewalk width and sidewalk obstructions, there's also road terminations such as these that are hazardous for pedestrians. One moment you could be walking, and on the next you trip and then you crack your head along the pavement.
In addition, Las Piñas lacks vegetation and as a result offers little to no shade, making it unbearable to walk, especially during the dry season. In summary, one would find walking in Las Piñas very unpleasant. With that said, the goals of the project is to improve the walkability and the overall quality of life along the surrounding area of the Las Piñas River.
And to achieve these goals, I have looked into two case studies, or rather examples of good urban planning, starting off with the walkability of the city of Stockholm, Sweden.
Now, the success of the Stockholm model is with its concept known as the Minute City, wherein everything is within walking distance, and that is, as the name implies, only takes about a minute to walk to said location. This concept is achieved through having amenities such as commercial districts and institutional districts housing schools and administrative and medical buildings is within close proximity to residential areas. So it's basically within walking distance. And then the residents of said area do not need to go outside of the community to look for food or work or institutions because they are just within walking distance. Now that is the success of the Stockholm model. The city is composed of these compact communities. And of course, lastly, we have the Chongje Canal. Just a brief comparison, Las Piñas runs a length of 2.1 kilometers, whereas the canal covers around 9.78 kilometers. Las Piñas is polluted, while Chongje Canal is clean and has reduced air pollution from the area by 36% and has a significantly cooler temperature. As seen during the summer, it could be seen to have a decrease of by 5 degrees. However, much like the Chongje Canal, Las Piñas River also has a road network built alongside it. It was built to decrease the volume of traffic, but in the case of the Chongje Canal, they removed the highways as they did nothing to decrease the volume of traffic. And once they removed, they began prioritizing the people rather than cars of the area, and this led to these results. A much overall increase in the quality of life of those living around the canal. And that's pretty much the goal of this project, to emulate these results within the Philippine context. And to emulate these results from these two aforementioned case studies, A walkway spanning 1 kilometer long, stretching from C5 road extension to Naga Road, will be erected along the river. But in the next slides, I'll be talking about the work needed to be done in preparation for erecting the river walkway. Starting off with the cleanup effort. Now the cleanup will be relatively light, composing of 2-man teams with a small boat. The said team will scoop up trash along the surface of the river. However, larger boats are out of the question as most bridges along the river barely reach above 2 meters past the waterline. Now for the trash below the surface of the water, dive teams will be used. However, this will be difficult to coordinate as the divers will be collecting trash under low visibility conditions due to the murky waters of the river, meaning that not all the trash would be collected. Now, after collecting the trash, it will then be sorted into different categories: recyclable plastics and non-plastics. These recyclable plastics will then be used as concrete aggregate. More on that later. One of the main reasons plastics will be used is because there is a landfill upriver, and there have been cases of landfill mismanagement that led to trash leading into a critical habitat and causing a fish kill in marine protected areas. With that said, as much as possible, I'd like to use up much of the trash collected during the cleanup as to prevent these events from happening. Now, why plastic, you may ask? Now, according to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, plastic aggregate only needs to take up 1.5% of the volume of concrete hollow block to have the same structural integrity as one without plastic aggregate. Another reason to use plastic aggregate is so that it would lessen the pollution of the surrounding area, and again, as much as possible, prevent another fish kill from happening prior to construction. Now we move on to the second phase, which is rehabilitation through the use of mangroves. Now this process of rehabilitation is called phytoremediation, essentially using a plant for the purposes of remediation of irradiated, contaminated, or polluted air and soil. Now, mangroves are perfect for these conditions since 1, it can thrive in low oxygen environments, 2, it can filter out carbon both in the air and in the water, and 3, in the context of this project, requires little to no human intervention for proliferation, since it can create seeds that then fall and flow along the current, and then settling at the bottom of any bodies of water, thereby solving the issue of planting and distribution along the Las Pinas River. Once phytoremediation has done its job, fish species long gone in Las Pinas would then come back, or would be reintroduced to the river. And with the reintroduction of fish species, it would attract bird species as well, such as the kingfisher, thereby creating, or rather bringing, the ecosystem of Las Pinas River back to life. Once rehabilitation is achieved, we then move on to the final phase, which is the repurposing of the area, or more specifically closing off the river drive road to cars and creating a space exclusively for pedestrians and cyclists. As you can see from this slide, there has been an ongoing project to expand the road network of Las Pinas. This implies Las Pinas still has a problem with traffic, and it implies that River Drive Road did not do its job of reducing vehicular flow traffic. And with that, I believe at some point Las Pinas would be more road than spaces, so might as well just remove the River Drive if it's not doing its job and repurposing it to something else more useful. Once River Drive has been barred from vehicles, the next step is to erect a walkway along the river. This is so that pedestrians and cyclists are given more options to traverse the riverside. In addition to creating a riverside walkway, I've set up a farmer's market and clusters for micro businesses or any other commercial spaces along the riverside drive. Since this would encourage pedestrians to use the river walkway, since you really can't, or rather you need activity to justify or encourage movement.
And with that, the purpose of the river drive is to improve overall quality of life, basically lowering the temperature of the river and its surrounding areas, giving it a cleaner, safer, and much more enjoyable space for
Pedestrians and cyclists who want to escape the urban jungle that is Las Pinas. Now in the next slides, I'll be talking about applying the concepts of Ian Bentley's responsive architecture, starting off with permeability. Now here in this master plan of the Riverside development, as you can see, taking in the concept of Stockholm's minute city and compact communities, I've placed numerous public transportation hubs in and around the riverside. This is done because Las Piñas has little to no transportation terminals or hubs available for commuters and pedestrians. Here is a space diagram of the riverside development. As you can see, most of it can be accessed on foot. Here we have the features of the Riverside Park, starting off with the River Drive's conversion into a walkway and bike lane. Then here we have the River Park pathway, textured in cobblestone as to show the pedestrians the termination between the Riverside Park and Las Piñas. Essentially putting your mind in a new environment, sort of a brief reprieve from the stress of walking and commuting in Las Piñas. Then here we have carpet grass as the main lawn material, as it is easy to install and requires little maintenance. And then after the carpet grass we have the isometric of a section of the river drive and the walkway.
From this map, it takes only about 11.9 minutes to get from the point ground zero to at any edge of the Riverside Park, and it would take half amount of time to reach around 0.5 kilometers to anywhere of the area. As for variety and legibility, we have the aforementioned businesses cluster, the tricycle hubs, and a typical church. Now the reason why I've considered setting up public amenities is that much of Las Piñas' public amenities is placed within gated communities, only exclusive to those living in these communities. And as much as possible, I want Riverside to be as inclusive as possible to the residents of Las Piñas. Here we have a tricycle hub I've mentioned.
And here we have a typical design of a church.
Then here we have a cross section and a longitudinal section of the river walkway. And here we have the space diagram of the river drive and the river walkway to give you an idea of how much space is allocated for each activity or movement.
How much it takes a transition from each space to the next.
In terms of richness, I've opted to use the following trees: Gmelina arborea, ilang-ilang, and carpet grass, starting off with Gmelina. I wanted to use this tree as it is a fast-growing tree, it provides an ample amount of shade, requires little to no pruning which reduces maintenance costs, and not only that, it is endemic within the Southeast Asia. It can be found all over Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, places with similar conditions to the Philippines, making it an ideal tree to set up in the Riverside Park. Next is the ilang-ilang, another fast-growing and endemic tree. This tree provides ample shade and enriches your overall sensory experience. It is said that it has flowers that bloom and give off a sweet aroma, thereby increasing the quality of your olfactory experience in the Riverside Park. Essentially, disassociating yourselves from the hustle and bustle and the pollution of Las Piñas. Then lastly, we have carpet grass. Besides the ease of installment, it requires little to no maintenance, and the smell will add to the olfactory experience of the Riverside Park as well. In essence, these plants will help Riverside be more tolerable to the people using it. Then here we have the entirety of the Riverside Park broken up into sections.
Essentially, this is what it would look like from an aerial perspective. And here I'm going to show you some renders.
And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.